Grace, mercy, and peace be yours from our Lord and our Savior, Jesus Christ. Brothers and sisters in God's family, we've all had times in our lives, moments of a crisis. Times where our life just is uprooted. Everything may seem to be just going fine, and then a phone rings. There's a knock on the door. And everything seems to just stop. Life is in turmoil. Today, as we begin this series in the book of Ruth, we're introduced to a family whose life was uprooted by crisis. And as we look at this uprooted family, let us learn how also to deal with times like that in our lives. Ruth is an amazing little book of the Bible. To introduce the first chapter of this book, let's watch this video.
If we looked at a timeline of the Old Testament, we would find the book of Ruth happening during the time of Judges, before 1 Samuel, but after Joshua. In Judah, there is a town named Bethlehem, and in that town, there is a man named Elimelech who is married to a woman named Naomi. They have two sons named Mahlon and Chilion. In those days, there was a famine in Bethlehem, and they decided to travel to the country of Moab to sojourn there, which means they didn't intend to stay permanently. While in Moab, Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi with two sons. These two sons married women from Moab. Chilion married a woman named Orpah, and Mahlon married a woman named Ruth. After 10 years of living in Moab, Mahlon and Chilion died, thus leaving Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth widowed. Naomi is now in a foreign land, without her husband, and without her sons. Naomi hears that the famine in Bethlehem is over, and desires to return home. She turns to her two daughters-in-law and tells them to return to their families. But Ruth and Orpah refuse, saying they will go with Naomi. This is how Naomi responds. Why would you? I don't have any sons to give you for husbands, and I'm too old to get a husband to have more sons for you. But even if I did, would you wait for them, refrain from marriage until they were old enough? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Together they went. Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye and went home. But Ruth stayed. Naomi argues, but Ruth says, do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go, and where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you. They then traveled to Bethlehem together. When they had returned, the town was stirred up because of them, asking if this was really Naomi. Her response is, do not call me Naomi, call me Mara, for the Almighty has dealt bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me? So they returned to Bethlehem, Ruth with her mother-in-law, Naomi.
So let's start. You have a Bible? Get it out. Two Bibles, please. Ruth is, as the video said, between Judges and 1 Samuel. It's page 187 in these two Bibles. It's a very short book, 4 chapters. Just a few pages here in these two Bibles. Ruth, chapter 1, page 187. Verse 1 here, Ruth says, in the days when the judges ruled, That's as far as we're going to look right now. As the video said, this was in the days of the judges between Joshua and 1 Samuel in history. So just a quick review of Old Testament history here. God had sent Moses to deliver the Israelites out of slavery from Egypt. And you remember how that worked? They rebelled against God, so they wandered in the desert for 40 years. God had given the people the Ten Commandments, the civil, the moral, and the ceremonial law. And eventually he brought them to the very edge of that promised land, the land he had promised Abram, we heard about in our first reading, right? The land of Canaan. Moses died. Joshua took over as leader. And in a series of miraculous victories, God drove out the Canaanites, and the Israelites moved into the promised land, the land promised to Abraham and his descendants. Joshua died. And then came this period of what was called judges. Now, when you hear judge, don't think of a courtroom judge. Here, a judge is just another term for a leader. And it was an interesting time. Back up just a verse, the very last verse of the book of Judges. Okay? Judges chapter 21, verse 25, the last verse here of Judges. And it just kind of summarizes this time period. It says, "In those days Israel had no king. Everyone did as he saw fit." Everyone did as he saw fit. And that even included spiritually. You know, God had delivered them from slavery. He had given them his law, his Ten Commandments. He had given them his word written down. He had done so much for them. And they were, And so what God did is he raised up this country, and they would invade Israel. Countries like the Philistines and the Moabites. By the way, that last one, keep that in your head. I'll come back to Moabites later. And so the people would be suffering, and they cry out to God, and God would send them a judge, a leader, people like Gideon or Samson. And God would use that person, that judge, to drive out the invaders, and the people would have a time of prosperity for a while, but eventually they drifted away from God again, and the cycle started over again and again and again. It is in this time, this period of history, the Judges, that we see this family that included Ruth. So look again at verse 1 here of Ruth. "In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife's name Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to Moab and lived there." There's a severe famine, so bad that Naomi and her husband Elimelech and their sons, they leave Bethlehem to the place that there is food, a foreign country where the Moabites live. And remember, I said, keep that name in your head. These are the very people who had invaded Israel and killed people in that invasion. And this family goes there because there's food there. And so they go, fully intending not to stay there, but to ride out the famine and then go back home. So this is the background for the book of Ruth. As we look at what happens to this family, we see something that is true for all of us when our lives are uprooted, and it's this. When life leaves you bitter, God has a plan for something better. When life leaves you bitter, God has a plan for something better. Take a look at verse 3. Now, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. And she was left with her 2 sons. They married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. And they had lived there about 10 years. Both Mahlon and Chilion also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. And during a famine, it's bad enough. Add to that, losing a husband. Add to that, another tragedy, losing her 2 sons. In a matter of 10 years, Naomi's life was turned upside down. On top of that emotional pain and dealing with that and with those losses, there's something else going on here. And in this, you have to understand the culture of the day. Women received their livelihood. They received everything from their husband. And if a woman was widowed, then her children took care of her. Naomi's husband has died. Her 2 sons have died. She can't get a job. There's no social security. She literally has nothing. She has no means to get food. And so, nothing she could do. Look at verse 6. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. She heard that the famine was done back home, and she probably had some distant relations still back there. There's nothing for her in Moab, so she decides to return home. And just to give you an idea of the mindset that she had at this point in her life, skip ahead to near the end of this chapter, verse 19. So the 2 women went on until they came to Bethlehem. When they arrived in Bethlehem, the whole town was stirred because of them, and the women exclaimed, "Can this be Naomi?" "Don't call me Naomi," she told them. "Call me Mara, because the Almighty has made my life very bitter. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi? The Lord has afflicted me. The Almighty has brought misfortune on me." You need just a little Hebrew lesson here. Naomi's name means pleasant, pleasing. That is not what she felt anymore. Life was not pleasant. Life was hard. And so she said, "Don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara." Mara means bitter. And now, what was Naomi blaming God for all these things in her life? Maybe. Maybe she was just stating a reality. She wasn't feeling like life was pleasant anymore. Losing a husband, losing her 2 sons, life was hard. Life was full of bitter. Maybe she was just simply showing how life was for her. Now, just for a moment, let's turn this on us. How do we react when things happen in our life that make us feel uprooted? How do we react when there's bad news, when there's a crisis? Do we tend to focus on the bad, on the bitter part of life, not waiting for the better part? Do we kind of have a pity party and make sure everyone else knows just how bitter our life is? Let me tell you how bad my life is. And we focus on what we don't have or what we've lost. And we don't wait for that better part. Does any of that describe you at times? See what Ruth and Naomi did here. Look at verse 6. When she heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, Naomi and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. That's good news. The famine is done. In fact, we see just to what degree the famine is over when Ruth and Naomi go back home to Bethlehem. Look at the end of the chapter, verse 22. So Naomi returned from Moab, accompanied by Ruth, the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, arriving in Bethlehem as the barley harvest was beginning. They're coming back to Bethlehem, and there's food, there's harvest going on. They can see how things turn from being bitter, and God has made it better. Physically, things were far better. But God wants so much more. You see, there's this amazing passage in the Bible, Romans 8:28. Here the Apostle Paul tells us, we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. God blessed Naomi and Ruth with some physical good. Life turned better. But he also had so much more in store for them. Take a look what this passage says. God works for the good of those who love him, who've been called according to his purpose. What is God's ultimate purpose for us? Isn't it that we are at his side in heaven? God turned bitter to better physically for them, yes, but he also used this for spiritual and eternal good. See, he wants us in heaven forever. When life gets tough, we can get down, just so down. We can start questioning God, giving up on him, wondering if he even cares anymore. But you know what? God never gives up on us. Jesus never gave up. When things got hard for Jesus, what did he do? He kept going. He even kept going to something that was harder. He kept going to the cross. When they were nailing his hands and feet, he kept going. When they were executing him, he kept going. Even though we sometimes give up on God and feel as if he's given up on us, so why not give up on him? Even though we've done this, Jesus never gave up on us. Because he stretched out his hands and died for us. Christ sacrificed himself for us, so that our lives would go from bitter to ultimately better, so that we would have eternal life in heaven. That assurance, that comfort, that faith truly affected Naomi and her daughter-in-law Ruth. And that guided them in making their decisions. And they had some decisions to make. You see, when faced with a major choice, faith follows God's voice. Look at Naomi's choice here. Verse 11. But Naomi said, "Return home, my daughters. Why should you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who could become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I'm too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there would still be hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and then gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up? Would you remain unmarried for them? No, my daughters. It is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has gone out against me. At this they wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. I probably need to explain something here. Back then was the law and the custom that if a man died without an heir, that man's brother should marry the widow. And the first son they had would receive the inheritance of the dead man. Well, Naomi knows she can't have any more children, and it'd be way too long to wait for that son to grow up, or her sons, for Orpah and Ruth to marry. It's not possible. And if Orpah and Ruth go back to Bethlehem with Naomi, they're not going to marry anyone there. Remember, they're Moabites. Members of that people that had invaded and killed Israelites. No. The best hope for these two women is for them to go back to their families and marry someone from their own people. But for Naomi, there's nothing in Moab for her. She would return back home to her people who believed in the true God. That was Naomi's choice. Orpah, she chose to go back to her family eventually, but Ruth, this is something beautiful. Look at verse 15. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. Ruth? She would not leave her mother-in-law. This tells us something. Something rather significant, doesn't it? Ruth married into this family. And she did not want to leave this family. Why is that? Naomi and Elimelech and their sons, they were different from the other people in Moab. Ruth realized that. Now, it was a perfect family by any means, but they were different. Because by coming into this family, Ruth heard of the true God, whose faithful love meant that he promised to send a Savior. Ruth was loyal to Naomi and would not leave her. Ruth was also loyal to the Lord God Almighty and would not leave him. Yes, she would now be a foreigner in the country she was going to, but she would be with God's people. And she would be, or would hear God's word. That was Ruth's choice. So, what can we learn about our choices in life? When faced with a major choice, faith follows God's voice. See, really, every choice we make is a moral choice. When faced with choices, how do we honor God with that choice? When given a choice, which option is good for our faith? Hey, if you're looking at going away to college, is there a WELS church nearby so your faith can be fed? When deciding which job to take, how will that affect your ability to go to church and worship? If you're seriously looking at getting married, how will that potential spouse encourage you or not encourage you to grow in your faith? When looking at a school for your children, what is best for their faith? Every choice we have is a moral choice. When faced with a major choice, faith follows God's voice. And there's probably another thing we can learn here too. If you're married and you have children that aren't married yet, remember how Ruth was affected by marrying into this family? It was a family she wanted to stay in. So make your marriage one that your children want to have a marriage just like it. Make Christ the center of your marriage. Make your marriage one that potential daughters or sons-in-laws want to have one just like it. Put Christ at the center of your marriage. And others will want to be just like it too. Ruth, it's an amazing little book, isn't it? And we just started looking at how this family was uprooted and how they put God first. As we follow this story, as we follow this family, we'll see how God even more so changed them from bitter to blessed. And how God blessed their lives again and again and ultimately how God even blesses you and me through this family. There's a lot more to come. May God bless us as we learn from this family tree, the book of Ruth. Amen.